What does it really take, to navigate the absolute highest levels of power? To stand firm on your convictions when every single decision is under, well, just relentless scrutiny?
It's a huge question.
And what happens when a really seasoned legal mind, forged by decades of experience, finds itself facing these unprecedented challenges? Not just once, but twice, at the very top of a nation's legal system.
Yeah, it's pretty rare in history, isn't it? A truly unique journey, and it's exactly what William Pelham Barr gets into in his memoir, One Damn Thing After Another.
Right, the book that hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list almost immediately.
Exactly. It's his candid account of being Attorney General under two very different presidents, George H.W. Bush and Donald Trump. And Barr is, remarkably, only the second person ever to hold that specific job non-consecutively. That alone tells you something about his career.
And as you're experiencing, this is a unique two-host AI conversation powered by Google's NotebookLM, really designed for a deeper, more dynamic book analysis.
Our mission today is to give you a comprehensive summary of this, well, significant political memoir. We'll dig into Barr's journey, his legal philosophy, the complex historical events he faced.
But critically, without any spoilers for those of you planning to read the book yourselves.
Absolutely. So to really get Barr's perspective, we kind of have to start at the beginning, right? His formative years, he was born in New York City, 1950, to highly educated parents. His father, Donald, taught at Columbia University. Interesting background there, raised Jewish and converted to Catholicism. And his mother, Mary, an Irish Catholic educator, also at Columbia. So a strong intellectual and you could say religious influence there.
Definitely sounds like a robust intellectual environment.
No doubt. And that kind of upbringing, steeped in academia, different viewpoints, it surely shaped his early worldview.
Yeah, and he talks quite vividly about his time at Columbia University in the late 60s. A period just defined by huge social upheaval.
Oh, absolutely. He was there during the infamous 1968 anti-Vietnam War protests, when students actually occupied university buildings.
But Barr, he didn't join the occupiers, did he?
No, quite the opposite. He famously sided with the counter-demonstrators. He saw their actions as essential for keeping order.
And there's that anecdote he shares, right? About being in the physical confrontations, positioned behind a big football player.
Who performed with such amazing proficiency that I never had to do anything but shove people. Yeah, it's a memorable line.
So what does Barr suggest was the lasting impact of that specific, almost physical experience on his political thinking? How did it shape his ideas about order versus protest?
He basically says it was incredibly formative. It solidified this deep skepticism he had towards, let's say, unrestrained protest. And it confirmed his belief in the need for strong, decisive authority to maintain order.
So he saw the student actions as an attack on the institution itself.
Pretty much, yeah. An assault on institutional integrity. And his response was to physically stand against it. This early experience, the way he frames it, was like a blueprint for his later commitment to executive power and aggressive law enforcement. He saw them as vital defenses against what he perceived as societal chaos. It's a theme you see again and again.
So a very clear ideological grounding early on. After Columbia, he initially had this fascinating ambition.
CIA director.
Right. He worked as an intern and analyst for the CIA from 71 to 77, even while he was in law school.
But he shifted away from that. What happened? Why change course when he seemed so focused?
Well, it sounds like a couple of things. His mother apparently had real concerns, about the dangers, the secrecy of intelligence work. That weighed on him.
Okay.
And he also became, let's say, disillusioned with the leadership under a particular CIA director at the time. He felt the agency wasn't as effective or clear in its direction as he thought it should be.
So those things combined. Yeah, they led him to pivot entirely toward law. He felt he could have a more direct, more principled impact on public policy that way.
And what a pivot. His real entry into government started with Reagan's 1980 transition team, then a role on the White House domestic policy staff. But it was his appointment as Assistant Attorney General for the Office of Legal Counsel, OLC, in '89 that he calls the job in which I was happiest.
Right. And in that role, he was providing the legal justifications for some major executive actions, things like the U.S. invasion of Panama and even the controversial practice of rendition.
Rendition. For listeners who might not know, could you quickly explain what that involves and why Barr's role in justifying it is significant?
Sure. As Barr talks about it, rendition is basically transferring individuals, often suspected terrorists, from one country to another, usually for interrogation, sometimes bypassing normal legal or extradition steps.
Highly controversial.
Very. Criticized for lacking due process. Barr's role in providing the legal basis for it really highlights his consistent view of a strong executive, one empowered to act decisively on national security, even if it means pushing legal boundaries. It shows his comfort with broad executive authority.
That belief in strong executive power really comes through during his first stint as AG under George H.W. Bush. Barr points to a key moment in the memoir that led directly to his nomination: the Talladega prison hostage crisis in August '91.
Ah, yes, he was acting attorney general then.
Right, and he directed the FBI's hostage rescue team to assault the prison. What does he say about the intensity of making that call, the pressure he was under, and how did that success impact his relationship with President Bush?
He paints a really vivid picture. High stakes, absolutely. He describes taking this decisive, almost unilateral action, and it worked perfectly.
All hostages rescued, no casualties.
Exactly. A clean, clear victory at a moment of national crisis. And that just profoundly impressed President Bush, who really valued decisive leadership. It cemented Barr's reputation as this no-nonsense guy who could act effectively under pressure. And yeah, it led directly to his nomination as Attorney General just weeks later. Bush saw someone he could trust with immense power.
That's quite a launch pad. So Barr gets sworn in as the 77th Attorney General in November '91, serves until '93. And during that time, he faced some huge challenges.
Definitely.
He talks about orchestrating the deployment of about 2,000 federal law enforcement officers during the L.A. riots after the Rodney King verdict. And he was deeply involved in the investigation of the Pan Am Flight 103 bombing over Lockerbie, Scotland. That terrible act of terrorism.
A huge international case.
So what do these events tell us about his approach, his priorities in law enforcement back then?
Well, in his telling, they underline his consistent focus on rapid, overwhelming force to restore order and pursue justice. With the LA riots, he believed in a strong federal response to what he saw as local authority breaking down.
Okay.
On Lockerbie, it was all about aggressive international pursuit of the perpetrators. His legal philosophy was clear and, frankly, aggressive. He details his 1992 report, The Case for More Incarceration.
Right, I remember the title.
It strongly argued for expanding prisons, both federal and state, and getting rid of parole release entirely. This wasn't just some policy paper, it was like a core statement of his belief that more incarceration was crucial for public safety. Punishment and deterrence were the main tools.
The very hardline stance.
Yeah.
And it's clear Barr really holds President Bush Sr. in incredibly high esteem. He almost idealizes him, even calling that supermarket scanner incident a media fabrication.
Yeah, he defends Bush fiercely.
Does the memoir explore Barr's own thoughts on that loyalty? Maybe contrast it with how he saw other presidents he served.
It does. His admiration for Bush Sr. is a constant thread. He presents their relationship as built on mutual respect for principles, for the integrity of the office. He saw Bush as thoughtful, someone who gave his AG the right amount of independence.
And the media criticism.
He views it as fundamentally unfair, just a symptom of bigger problems in society. It's a very personal, very protective portrayal. And it definitely provides a fascinating contrast when you get to his much more complicated relationship with Donald Trump later. It really shows Barr's preference for a certain style of presidential leadership.
Okay, so after that first term, Barr leaves government in '93, spends nearly 24 years in the private sector. Executive VP and General Counsel at GTE, which later became Verizon.
Right, a huge chunk of time.
It's striking, isn't it? After being Attorney General almost a quarter century in the corporate world, the book only gives it 13 pages. But what can we kind of infer about his legal thinking during that time? Did that corporate work shape his later views on, say, government regulation or how business and policy interact?
That's a great point. Even though the book's brief on it, you can't dismiss those years. Being general counsel for massive companies like GTE, then Verizon, that means navigating incredibly complex regulations, multi-billion-dollar deals, intense global legal fights.
Huge responsibilities.
Absolutely. It must have honed his understanding of large-scale operations, managing risk, the practical side of applying law in business, especially with tech and telecom. Those skills were undoubtedly valuable when he returned to the Justice Department, especially dealing with challenges like the pandemic or digital age regulations.
Yeah, it shows his legal mind was always working, even outside public service. And his expertise was still called upon. After 9/11, he counseled Bush administration officials.
Right. He argued for treating terrorism as a national security issue, not purely a criminal one.
And he pushed for military tribunals over civilian courts for terrorism cases, What was his thinking behind that distinction?
Barr's argument was basically that traditional criminal justice couldn't handle the scale and nature of the terrorist threat. He saw terrorism as an act of war, needing a national security response with different tools, different jurisdictions.
So military tribunals seemed more appropriate to him.
In his view, yes. More efficient, more secure for prosecuting people captured in a wartime context, prioritizing intelligence gathering and defense over what he saw as the cumbersome protections of civilian courts in those extraordinary situations. It's another clear example of his executive-first thinking.
Barr's journey is just packed with these high-stakes decisions. And as we're digging into his reflections, maybe this is a good moment to just pause, let these ideas sink in.
Absolutely. And if you're finding this kind of deep book analysis helpful for reflection, for rational thought, remember to check out Mindful Moments. That's our YouTube channel. It's a space designed exactly for engaging with ideas like these.
Okay, so now we move to the biggest part of the book. Barr's second tenure as Attorney General, February 2019 to December 2020. It's fascinating how reluctant he apparently was to go back.
Very reluctant. He even shares his wife Christine's stark warning. Any sacrifice you make will be wasted on this man. Pretty blunt.
Wow. Yet he took the job. What ultimately pulled him back into that, well, intensely chaotic political scene of 2019, especially under a president like Donald Trump?
That really is the key question, isn't it? Barr says that despite deep hesitation, it was this unsolicited 19-page memo he wrote back in June 2018 that kind of paved the way.
The memo about the Mueller investigation.
Exactly. It critically analyzed and challenged the legal basis of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. And that memo caught Donald Trump's eye. Barr genuinely believed the Mueller probe was flawed, maybe even a partisan overreach.
So his willingness to say that publicly,
combined with his long-held belief in a strong executive, it just aligned with Trump's own complaints and his vision for the DOJ. It seems it was less about wanting the job and more about a perceived duty to fix what he saw as a dangerous legal precedent.
And of course, the Mueller investigation immediately became central to his second AG role. Barr spends a lot of time on the end of that investigation into Russian interference. He describes his very controversial 4-page summary of Mueller's report. The one that emphasized no criminal conspiracy was established between the Trump campaign and Russia.
Highly controversial, yeah.
What were the main criticisms of his summary, and how does Barr defend what he did?
Well, the criticism was fierce. Mainly that his summary downplayed key findings and sort of shaped a misleading public narrative before the full report came out. Critics felt he was effectively clearing the president prematurely.
And Barr's defense?
He defends it vehemently, argues it was a fair, accurate summary needed for public clarity, given how long and complex the full report was. He stresses that Mueller himself said he couldn't establish a criminal conspiracy, and Barr felt it was his job to state that clearly, right away.
He also shares some personal observations about Mueller.
Yeah, quite concerning ones. He mentions meeting Mueller in 2019 and noting that both of his hands were trembling and his voice was tremulous. Barr suggests this indicated Mueller wasn't maybe fully in command of the report's presentation himself.
His second term certainly threw unprecedented challenges at him. Barr talks about managing the DOJ during the start of the COVID pandemic, his response to the massive civil unrest after George Floyd's death,
and his direct involvement in defending federal property during the Portland riots.
Right, and he notably resisted using the Insurrection Act to deploy federal troops during those riots. He argued it would massively swell the number of rioters. Why did he think that? What does it say about how he viewed executive power during civil unrest?
He explains his reasoning pretty clearly. Barr worried that invoking the Insurrection Act, which lets the president use the military domestically, would basically nationalize what he saw as a local policing problem. That was a bridge too far for him.
He thought it would backfire.
Exactly. Not only swell the rioters' numbers by giving them this national cause, maybe even making them martyrs in some eyes, but also risk alienating the public and blurring that crucial line between military and civilian law enforcement. So for Barr, even with his broad view of executive power, the military was a last resort. For truly dire, widespread insurrections, not urban unrest, he felt federal law enforcement like marshals or the FBI could handle. Direct military intervention, he believed, would backfire badly.
He also describes intervening in cases involving Trump associates, like Michael Cohen and Roger Stone, specifically changing the sentencing recommendation for Stone.
While maintaining Trump didn't ask him to.
Right. How does Barr justify those interventions in the book? especially with all the public scrutiny and accusations of political interference.
Barr stands firm that his actions were about applying justice consistently, not political pressure. In the Stone case, for example, he argues the initial sentencing recommendation was just way too harsh, inconsistent with DOJ guidelines for similar crimes.
So he saw himself as correcting an overreach.
Yes, upholding the department's institutional integrity, correcting what he saw as an overzealous prosecution. He admits it looked bad, the appearance of impropriety, but insists his decisions were always based on legal principle, even if they weren't popular. It's a key part of how he presents himself as this principled, independent actor.
Barr's picture of Trump himself is incredibly complex, isn't it? It swings between sharp criticism and sometimes surprising defense. He notes Trump had a deep intuitive appreciation of the importance of religion in the health of our nation. But then he also calls Trump puerile, talks about his frequent pettiness and overly contentious style, how he treated people like utensils, showed an apparent disregard for accuracy.
It's definitely not a simple portrait.
So how does Barr square these contradictions in the memoir? Does he explain how he managed serving someone he clearly saw as deeply flawed in some ways, yet admired in others?
It's one of the most revealing parts of the book, I think. He doesn't ignore Trump's significant personal and leadership issues, but he seems to view those flaws as often tactical, maybe stemming from a lack of self-control rather than fundamental malice.
So he focused on the policies.
It seems that way. He reconciles it by focusing on what he saw as Trump's positive policy instincts, judicial appointments, deregulation, a strong sense of national sovereignty. Barr seems to suggest he served the presidency and the conservative agenda Trump represented, often putting up with the personal frustrations to achieve what he felt were important government goals. The memoir gives you a very personal look at that constant tension, serving a boss whose style deeply clashes with your own.
And the climax of that second term comes with the aftermath of the 2020 election. Barr's memoir actually opens with his December 1st, 2020 statement to the Associated Press, the one saying the DOJ found no evidence of fraud that could change the election outcome.
A direct contradiction to what the president was saying publicly. Huge moment.
What was the internal process leading to that statement, and how does he describe the final climactic meeting with Trump that followed?
He describes a really thorough internal DOJ investigation, looked into all credible claims of election fraud. He felt it was his duty to do it properly.
And when they found no widespread evidence,
he felt it was his responsibility to say so publicly, to calm the nation, uphold the election's integrity. The meeting with Trump afterwards. Explosive, according to Barr. Trump was enraged, struggling to keep his temper under control, shouting, lashing out. And it ends with Trump yelling, "Accepted." Twice accepting Barr's resignation and then telling him to go home. It just crystallizes the breakdown, the irreconcilable differences that had grown between them.
Throughout the whole story, Barr consistently presents himself as this principled conservative lawyer. His career shaped by his Catholic faith, his strong belief in executive power.
Yeah, and you get little personal glimpses, too, like his lifelong interest in playing the bagpipes competitively, adds a human touch.
Yeah, definitely.
And the memoir really digs into these core themes, doesn't it? The scope of executive power, constitutional authority, the critical, often aggressive role of law enforcement in democracy, as he sees it.
And that constant tension between political pressure and legal independence.
Exactly. Especially around prosecution decisions. Plus, themes of loyalty versus principle. When do public servants support their bosses? When do they resist? And of course, his view on pervasive media bias and the intense political polarization that shapes how everything is seen and understood today.
Barr's writing style, it combines that legal precision with, surprising moments of humor, even self-deprecation sometimes.
It does. First-person narrative, lots of direct dialogue, really detailed scene reconstructions. It kind of puts you in the room for some of those intense conversations.
It's definitely a compelling read if you're interested in how power works from the inside.
For sure. This book really offers a rare look into that crucible of power. And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? How do people at the very top navigate the moral, legal, political compromises that come with the job, especially when their decisions become these flashpoints in such a divided country?
That's definitely something to ponder long after you finish the book. And for more insightful conversations and analyses like the one you've just heard, remember to check out Mindful Moments in our podcasts.
And as always, click the link on screen for the in-depth book analysis. Please subscribe, share, consider purchasing via the link, and most importantly, think rationally.